Welcome back. We're discussing the humanitarian crisis unfolding as Sri Lanka's three-decade-old civil war reaches what may be a turning point. From Strasbourg, I'm joined by Nirj Deva, a Sri Lankan-born British Member of Parliament, now a European Parliament member. From Urbana, Illinois, Dr. Fransis Boyle, Professor of International Law at the University of Illinois College of Law. And from Oslo, Norway's Minister for Development and the Environment, Erik Solheim, who played a part in the Norwegian delegation negotiating a truce in Sri Lanka's civil war. Let's get back to the discussion with a comment from Dr. Boyle. I know you wanted to respond, sir, to some of the points being made earlier on.
Right. Well, I think it's important to keep in mind the timeline here of what happened. There were reasonable good faith negotiations going on here, brokered in part by Norway, to its credit. At the beginning, near the beginning of the negotiations, the LTTE indicated they would be prepared to consider a federal state for Sri Lanka as the outcome. And then the President Rajapakse came to power, terminated these negotiations, terminated the ceasefire, recently just terminated the services of Norway. Recently terminated the services of Norway as the honest broker here. And then, as Mr. Solheim pointed out, encouraged the Tamils to go into the so-called no-fire zone, where they are now pounding them with artillery, tanks, and also with naval ships as we speak today. Now, putting all that history aside, again, we have a humanitarian catastrophe on our hands, the lives of 50,000 people at risk. We need an immediate ceasefire here on the part of the government of Sri Lanka and the Tamil Tigers, which, by the way, the Tigers did proclaim 2 weeks ago, then the government of Sri Lanka for 2 days. We need to get back to the ceasefire, massive humanitarian assistance to the people there, and then we could negotiate, for example, an evacuation of the Tigers from Vani, very similar to what happened to the Palestine Liberation Organization back in 1982 in Lebanon, where the United States, where 20,000 people were killed. The United States intervened and negotiated the evacuation of the PLO from Beirut. I think this could be done, but it's going to require leadership by the United States, Britain, France, and India to do it.
Well, let's get from Nirj Deva what prospect there is of the Sri Lankan government perhaps taking the higher road here in the interests of the civilians and saying, yes, we will stop the shelling, stop the heavy artillery, and give a chance for an evacuation there, at least to help the humanitarian aid to come in.
Riz, before we go to that, let's go back to what Professor Boyle quite wrongly said. It was Ranil Wickremesinghe who offered to have a broker ceasefire with the Norwegian sponsorship, and it was the LTTE who refused to allow Ranil Wickremesinghe to win again because they found him and his peace efforts a greater threat. And President Rajapakse waited for 1 year while people were being blown up before he acted. Now, these are the facts, and you can go into any timeline and find that. So let's not distort history. There's a lot of suffering going on. The country has suffered enough. And the political solution has to come. And every faction is willing and ready and able to talk about a political settlement around the table. But the LTTE refused to come to the table. Erik knows this, I know this, and everybody who is involved knows it, except, strangely, Professor Boyle.
Well, but Mr. Deva, what prospect is there of helping the refugees right now? What can be done at the humanitarian level to try to help those?
My principal job in the European Parliament is a coordinator for the International Development Committee, and I have oversight of the development budget, which is about €8 billion. And we are very anxious to provide every sense of support to the Sri Lankan authorities to give the right amount of food, medicine, water, and everything that is required to those people who have come out and are suffering. I now appeal to the LTTE to allow the other peoples who they are holding hostage, release them so that they stop suffering. because the international community has goodwill to look after these people, give them the right appropriate measures of humanitarian assistance, and to give them the medicines they require now. But they can't be given medicine if they're being held hostage behind guns. Let them come out, let them come into the camps. There are Red Cross and Medicine Sans Frontier, and all the other people are ready to act.
Okay. Sean's been waiting patiently in London with a question or comment. Sean, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Niraj, just to talk about these refugees. About 7 o'clock UK time, just about 2 hours ago, Channel 4 reported the abuse going inside the camp. And people inside, not outsiders, not LTT, nobody, inside the camp telling that it is a prison and no one's there to protect them, and there is an abuse going on, sexually abusing women, and 3 people got killed today. That's been reported inside the camp by Channel 4. And why the hell the Sri Lankan government is not letting anyone now, any of the agencies, any UN agencies or anyone now, but you are telling that everyone is waiting. Why don't you let them now and then protect those civilians and save them? There are people without food there, and then they all we just seen it on the television.
Sean, let's let Mr. Deva respond. Let the minister respond. Go ahead, sir.
Do you want me to answer that?
Deva, sorry. Sorry,
yes, I'm in
please.
Strasbourg, so I'm in Strasbourg, so I have missed this Channel 4 news item. It has come as a bit of a surprise to me, if this is indeed the case. This needs to be verified. There are United Nations people there, the EU team is there. I will get in touch with ECHO and our EU people to check whether this has happened within this camp. As we understand it, there are some 200,000 people in that camp. So the 3 ladies that we've been mentioned just now, we need to find out. And I'm sure the Sri Lankan authorities will give the facts as they see as to what happened. However, that does not preclude the fact that we are ready to assist. We are ready to go and do whatever we can to help the Sri Lankan authorities to give them the proper relief. That is our duty, and that is what we are going to do.
Eric Solheim, to what extent do you feel, knowing the region as you do, that there is something of a turning point, it may be a very decisive turning point coming up in this conflict?
There is definitely a very important turning point at the moment, but let me just comment on the immediate humanitarian suffering, because, I mean, both the LTT and the government must now live up to their obligations. I mean, the LTT should accept that people leave the zone, and they have no right to keep people in the zone against their will. On the other hand, the government has the obligation to let in the ICRC, I mean the International Red Cross, let their ship into the zone, let them bring in food, let them bring out people who should medically be evacuated, and let the government accept that the UN get access to the zone to do a humanitarian study of the situation there. That's what's the immediate need today. In the more longer perspective of the next few weeks and months, clearly the government of Sri Lanka is on the verge of a military victory. They will destroy the Tamil Tigers as a conventional military force. The LTT will no longer be able to control territory in northern Sri Lanka. But whether they can win the peace is a much more difficult question to answer. Unfortunately, I believe that they will win a very important military victory, but be far from winning the peace. And to what extent the LTT will be able to continue with other means is also far too early to answer.
Let's see what Chala in London has to say. Chala?
Yeah, my question is...
Oh, Thaya, go ahead, Thaya.
I'm from Sri Lanka. My name is Daya. Okay. My mother has been killed by the Tamil Tigers, but still they are the only representative who can look after the Tamil. You are saying the government is looking after the Tamils, but about 100 or 200,000 of Tamils have been stopped by the Tigers or have the whatever reason they kept it there, but they have been looked after. 1 or 2 they complain. That is anyway it can happen. Other thing is what we are hearing from you all is only talk. I am fed up. I don't know. When I'm watching you all.
That's an interesting point. Let me ask Dr. Boyle this. To what degree do you think, Dr. Boyle, that this issue, the issue of the humanitarian crisis and the whole Sri Lankan conflict, has been given any real sense of priority by the international community, by the US, for example, by Europe?
Well, Rez, I hate to say it, it seems to me that the United States, Britain, France, and India have given the government of Sri Lanka the green light to destroy the Tamil Tigers, no matter what the cost to the 50,000 innocent Tamils right now at risk as we speak. I hate to say it, but based on my involvement in other international conflicts in the Middle East and the Balkans, it seems they have the green light to do this. And that gets back to the need to change that green light to a red light, and let's solve the humanitarian crisis first, and then we can sit down and talk about some type of negotiating solution. But if this destruction goes forward, I disagree with Mr. Solheim. I think